So, what the hell is Andromeda? Meta has been sneaking behind advertisers' backs and changed their algorithm. Yes, once again. This time, though, it is more than just a simple algorithmic tweak. It has turned the whole targeting method upside down. And the industry is slightly panicking, not sure what to do with it, if it applies to me, if it doesn't. It does. It applies to all advertisers and actually also anybody who's doing organic content on Meta as well. Meta uses AI to define how your creatives get out there. It uses AI to analyze your creatives, defining who would be most interested in them, and then rolls it out based on your campaign setup. Before, when you started doing campaigns, you start with a campaign. You define a goal for it. Let's say you want to drive traffic to the website. So you choose that campaign goal. The system finds users who want to go to your website, who are more likely to click your ads. After that, you defined an audience targeting. You choose different kind of interest or similar signals from your previous buyers or any kind of other interest or signal targeting, basically. And then underneath that, you upload all of your ads. And from all of that narrowed down pool, Meta would match the creative to the user. But with Andromeda, it's turned upside down. So it basically looks at creatives first. It uses AI to define what the creatives are, who it would most likely appeal to, and then it uses that information to find the right kind of users, and afterwards it matches it for your rest of your targeting. So it has reversed the whole flow, is relevant to all of the advertisers in the world. Nothing to do about it except to adapt and make sure that your content follows the current best practices. It means that all of the content that you upload to your campaigns, it's being evaluated from the first moment to the end. So it looks at how your audience interacts with your ads. It looks at the early metrics like hook rates, for example, for your videos, but it goes deeper than that. It looks at how audience attention is being retained throughout your videos, how much people are sharing your content, how much is being clicked on, and how basically your content resonates with people, and takes all of those metrics into account in order to match actually define the quality, so to say. But besides just looking at the metrics of how well it works, it is all about variety. The algorithm will look at your ads and define how similar those are. If your ads are too close to each other, so let's say you have a pair of shoes in a studio setup like this, for example, and then you have another pair of shoes. The first one is red, and the second one you got, it's white leather, for example. But it's in the same studio. It's here, right here on the table, two different products. But the AI would actually define this most likely being the same kind of creative. So you won't get the ads out there because it just thinks you have 10 different ads that are the exact same ones. So in order to get that variety out there, you need to start building more like ad structure. So you need to look at what kind of a person would buy this pair of red shoes and place it in different kind of environments, have different kind of storytelling angles, triggers, and visually different kind of creatives. Traditionally, you were able to build like winning concepts around your brand, but now if you're hugging too tightly onto your brand guidelines, it won't work. You need to let go the control and figure out a way to keep your brand intact while also looking at the creative variety in itself. So you really need to go deep with it. You need to understand who your audiences are, who your consumers are, and start structuring it based on different kind of signals underneath demographics. So who would buy this pair of red shoes? It could be a person in a city, going for a party, and then figuring out that mindset and start building what kind of narratives will actually make that sale happen. And then underneath that, you also need to consider what kind of visual ways you have to tell the story. You need lo-fi, you need UGC, you need branded content, you need product-led content, lifestyle, all of it. Creative variety really is the key, and that's the challenge at the same time. How do you maintain brand while bringing variety into it? So when we're talking about creative variety, it doesn't only touch upon UGC and branded content and all of the classical ways of doing creatives. Whether you love it or whether you hate it, AI is going to be your friend. So you need to be making sure that AI is part of your creative systems because it plays such a huge role in how Andromeda, first of all, functions, but also in order to add that needed variety that goes beyond ad formats, different kind of colors and communication, you need to have enough tailoring built into it. And AI is here to help with that. So if you really want to adopt a proper variety, find a way to incorporate AI into the whole system of creatives. With Andromeda, one of the biggest effects is that it's turning meta into content-hungry machinery. Creative fatigue hits much faster than it did before because it's not looking at only surface-level engagement metrics, it's looking at much deeper level of engagement. It also means that your audiences are getting tired of your ads much faster. So in order to really get your marketing functions going on, you need to make sure that you have that volume and you do refreshes constantly, let's say roughly every 2 weeks even, with a huge amount of creative variety added on top of the existing ones. So that's where the challenge lies, is how do you build in the creative variety into the system? And how do you keep up with the constant need of refreshes? So what does this mean to your creative strategy? You need to consider the elements of how Andromeda functions when you're doing briefing, when you're building a different kind of research and the angles that your concepts will be built on. First of all, you'll need to consider hooks. I mean, that's been the buzzword within the industry for the past as many years as I remember. But with this, it is even more important to make sure that you get the attention from the first millisecond of the video. After that, when you've hooked your audiences, that's not enough. You need to make sure that you have storytelling within the video that actually carries through and keeps the audiences engaged with your video. You need to make sure that you build more of a holistic content packages to get the attention of different kind of individuals. So the variety comes through creative briefing, essentially. Or that's the first element, of course, that you need to consider. You start looking at your audiences and consider if you have an older lady who browses Facebook feeds versus if you're going for Gen Z who loves to spend their time on Instagram Reels, for example. You might have a product that fits both of these individuals, but you need to start considering the mindsets that these different kind of audiences are. So you need to have, as a first layer, you need to have a mindset. You could be saying a persona or a different kind of a consumer segment, for example. So you need to look at holistically what kind of individuals you have within your consumer pool. Underneath that, you need to start building different angles towards tailored to these different audiences. So you could take functionality of the shoe, like what kind of context would this older lady or this younger woman wear this shoe in? And then you can start building this into different angles. You can build in different emotionality in there or functionality. And then once you've mapped all of these out, you go one step even lower and start adding the creative variety through formats and through different creative means. And that's where you have the different kind of UGCs and branded content and so forth. So you have multiple layers that you need to consider when you're doing creative strategy, which essentially, of course, leads into creative briefing and also creative production. So it becomes a bit of a beast. However, this is something that I've always been talking about from the first moment when I started doing creative strategy, basically. You have always needed to consider individuals in order to move masses. But with Andromeda, it's not just a need, it's a must. So it's something that you really need to implement into your systems. So what does this mean for your creative strategy? You need to consider what kind of format your creatives are going to be living in. Whenever you're doing video, for example, you need to consider hooks. Like, that's not surprising. As long as short-form video content has existed, hooks have been the key of actually defining success. However, with Andromeda, it's even more important that you get the attention from the first millisecond of your ad. But it's not the only thing. You need to also make sure that your storytelling is compelling enough that you actually retain the audience attention. Because Meta is looking at the whole holistic setup of different kind of metrics of how people engage and different kind of earned actions and meaningful interaction with your content. So in order to make sure that that happens, you need to also start dividing your research, your creative strategy, your creative briefing and production towards different kind of individuals. I've been talking about this for as long as I can remember, but now with Andromeda, it is not just a fun thing to do, it's something that you must do. You need to start looking into what's underneath the surface level of your consumer pool. So what are the different kind of buyer segments or mindsets or personas that you have? So you divide your audience into different segments. You could have an older lady who lives on the edge of the city, and then you could have a young and bustling Gen Z lady instead. And both of them might be interested. I don't know what that product could be, but that could be that you have a perfect shoe that fits both of these personas. However, in order to get them to buy, you need to keep that in mind when you're doing your creatives. So figuring out different kind of angles underneath these mindsets. What would they actually care about? What kind of different elements or emotions or tonalities do they have that would actually resonate with them? So you start building with different kind of audience segmentation. Underneath, you have the different kind of angles that you can go for, and you can use different kind of USPs or triggers or different elements from the product in order to appeal to them. And then underneath all of that, you still need to have the visual creative variety. So you need to have UGC, you need to have your branded content, you need to have your AI-driven content. So you create this whole kind of system around personalized details that AI can then match the right creative to the right audience and help push your reach much further than you otherwise would. So traditionally, you had one concept rule set up. You would have a set of creatives, certain direction, and then you would just keep on iterating on it. But with Andromeda, you need to have these different fragmented varieties, so to say, and you need to do bigger swing iterations. So you need to consider the continuance, the whole engagement, the whole mindset of an individual when you're doing it. So it's not just one track, it's multiple tracks that are living and breathing as we go. So to recap it all, Andromeda needs creative variety. You need to build your creatives based on audience insights, do a proper segmentation and really personalized tailoring with a lot of visual variety, concept variety in general. Then on top of that, you need faster feedback loops between media and creative to make sure that you are doing proper synergies between the different kind of platform owners and creative specialists. Make sure they talk to each other, have good enough communication that you are able to move faster and iterate based on data and insights and research. You need to do briefing based on personalities or mindsets or individuals in order to achieve that creative variety that goes beyond formats only. You need to rely on AI to help you push that variety out there. You need to iterate with bigger swings, faster, making sure that it's not just small messaging tweaks or moving your logo from one corner to another. You need to make sure that audience sees it and also the AI algorithm sees it, because that basically defines who and how your ads are being seen. Essentially, this is not the most groundbreaking in a sense that this is how we've already worked with creative and media and the whole system, because it scales and it works. So Andromeda is here more to enforce it, making sure that we do our best and get the message out there. So now that we've talked about variety and AI and everything, for all of the worried souls out there, do not be afraid. Even if we talk a lot about variety and volume and all of these things, it's still the essence that matters. If you have 10 amazing ads or even 5 amazing ads that really resonate with your audiences, that's still going to work better than if you have 10,000 crappier ones. Focus on the quality and that you do your best following the best practices and just go out there and re-engage with your audiences in a new way. maybe you get to learn something new. And that's it. Adios.